You guys know him. You guys love him. Emil Pagliarulo, Todd Howard's right-hand man. Been around since the Fallout 3 era. He is credited as being in charge of the writing on all Bethesda projects, whether it be Fallout 3, Skyrim, Fallout 4, Starfield. He's the guy at the core of it. Now, the writing on these games have often been called into question. It's like the games are really good and fun, but they lack a lot of depth narratively. It's often a weak point. At least it's perceived as a weak point. So this discourse has kickstarted after Starfield, especially as we lead into Elder Scrolls 6, because he's also in charge of the writing there. And of course, expectations are going to be crazy, crazy high. And here's the deal. I think the games industry of 2026, 7, 8, whenever Elder Scrolls launches, is just fundamentally different than it was when Skyrim launched. I think games like Baldur's Gate, The Witcher, have changed people's perception and expectation of what should be possible in a narrative RPG. And I don't even think that's like a crazy thing to say. I think that's pretty reasonable. And the one thing that I think everybody kind of agrees on, even Bethesda fans, is that the writing quality has been, at the very least, stagnant over the last 2 decades. Like it's not grown more impressive. It's, if anything, gotten a little more shallow and hollow. So this is something we've talked about a lot consistently. And AVV Gaming did a video 9 months ago breaking down why he believes Bethesda's writing has declined. And this was shared with me by one of you guys asking me if I could check it out. So I'm always down. As always. The video will be linked in the description box below. I recommend you go check it out, show some love, and let's see what he says about the writing in Bethesda games. Let's see.
Let's say, okay, we're going to write the great American novel. It's going to be this thick. And on every page will be written comedy and tragedy, and it'll be wonderful. It'll be amazing. And you're going to give this book, this great American novel, to the player. And what are they going to do with it? They're going to rip out every page and make paper airplanes out of them. And they're going to throw them around the room. And they're never going to see your story. Because the story is there, right? But they are going to spend 30 hours making shacks.
What you just heard is a quote from Emil Pagliarulo, Bethesda's lead writer at the time, explaining how even if he wrote the greatest story in gaming history, it would be wasted on fans as they would ignore it, instead opting to spend time building shacks.
I agree with this representation of it because I've listened to that whole talk. You can see it. It's like a 43 minute talk that Emil gave. And I don't know how to interpret that statement and the rest of the talk in any way other than like they do not look at their audience very highly. Like they don't think their audience is capable of appreciating and understanding a high quality story because they're like, a lot of people are just going to like screw around building forts. A lot of people are just going to look at notes or skip the notes entirely. And it's just basically setting up this, what feels like an excuse to not try very hard. You know, like literally it's like, why? I could write the best story ever, but they're not going to appreciate it. So why bother? Like that's basically the sentiment that's put forward in the entire talk. And we've looked at the whole talk before, because again, it's I think quite revealing just to the mindset. He even makes references in that video or in that talk about, you know, the final goal of a game developer is to work on the game, release the game, read the reviews, cry about the reviews, and then ignore the reviews. It's like, bro, you shouldn't do that. That's the opposite of what you will do. But it starts to explain the mindset of, you know, BGS in general and why they've ended up in the position that they are. You know, it's pretty telling.
This was him discussing writing in Fallout 4, which featured the settlement building feature. Do you know how many games prior to Fallout 4 that Bethesda made that had these building mechanics? Precisely 0.
Skyrim did have a DLC where you could like have your house, sort of, but yeah, you're right. There was no base building.
So that's right. His assumption of his game fans building shacks was literally fictitious, as they...
Well, in Emil's defense, what he was trying to say was that you can write an amazing story, but players will still end up screwing around doing other things. They'll spend 30 hours building bases. They'll spend 20 hours going and crafting. They'll spend 5 hours going and hunting. They'll do this and that. Like, he's just trying to throw things out, activities within Fallout 4 that they'll busy themselves with. But it's also true in Skyrim. Like, a lot of people will just go through procedurally generated quests repeatedly instead of engaging with your super intensely written narrative. Like, so... yeah.
They never provided that option in their previous games, so he wouldn't know if that's how they would rather spend their time in a game. And that, by the way, was at the time the lead writer of Bethesda Game Studios. It's almost him saying that there's no point in writing anything good, so why bother?
Yeah, I mean, it literally is what it... like, I don't know how else to interpret it. I've seen some BGS fans come in response to that clip and the talk in general and be like, well, no, he's just saying, like, players like gameplay, so you can and you should write amazing stories, but don't be upset when they don't engage with them that much. And it's like, he's framing it as like at a game developer conference, talking about how you don't need to put that much depth because ultimately people won't appreciate it anyways. Like, it's not a good look.
Maybe because it's your job? Pride? I mean, I don't know. Did you know the majority of people who watch YouTube videos watch less than 50% of the video? Mm-hmm. So shall I stop speaking at the halfway point? Should I just...
That's a good way of putting it. That's a good... yeah, statistically, you guys are only going to watch 26% of the video. So I'm only going to do 2.5 minutes of the 10-minute video. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, it's like, that doesn't excuse you not doing your job, you know?
Just put up a black screen? No, because some people will watch to the end. Just like some people will play a game for a good story and despise the shack building element. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Emil Pagliarulo, the current director of Bethesda Game Studios. Now, these statements display a lack of care, genuine despise for his own fans, and a misunderstanding of who Bethesda fans are, and a lot of delusion. He has said so much more than this, and just recently too. I've done a lot of videos on Bethesda, but in a nutshell, the company is falling from grace faster than a studio that hires Sweet Baby Inc. I've done a video on why here, but in a quick summary, Bethesda dominated the gaming world for a while. From 2001 till about 2015, these guys released hit after hit and earned a reputation as the gaming industry's darlings. Now, they've released terrible games, argued with fans, and their reputation is at an all-time low.
I will say with this,
games, argued with
right here, the developer tag, basically this is somebody within the customer support team. So they're tagged as developers, but they work in a separate department. Like, I don't think this person, Kraken, I don't think Kraken is like in the studio. I think they're somewhere else. But it is remarkable that in 2018, they have this catastrophe with Fallout 76. And tons of people are requesting refunds. The game's broken and all this. And the customer support team gets involved in their own fair share of scandals at that time as well, where they are asking people who they have, in some cases, falsely banned, mistakenly banned, deleted their accounts in the player's progress. There's one case of a character who had a character like well over 100, and the player had that character deleted and shut down as a mistake. Like, the developers just screwed up and deleted the wrong account, basically thinking he was a cheater. And the customer support team was asking those people to like write essays apologizing for cheating and talking about how cheating is not good in an online community and all this. And it's like, guys, read the room, okay? You are not in the position to be lecturing anybody, okay? Like, they got into this scandal back in 2018, and then Starfield launches, and this same team were caught in another wave of scandals, talking about how astronauts wouldn't have been bored when they went to the moon. You know, like, this person says this story is generic as it gets. Gameplay gets boring. I wish there was a reason to even bother exploring planets and building outposts. Everything is fun until you do it once. Then it's all repeating soulless chore. So this is just a review. And then the customer support people respond to that review saying, thank you for taking your time to leave the review for Starfield. You can fly, you can shoot, you can mine, you can loot. Starfield is an RPG with hundreds of hours of quests to complete and characters to meet. Most quests will vary with character skills and decisions massively changing. You know, blah, blah, blah. You will feel like you are playing a totally different game. Put points and different skills from a character you've previously created, and now you're faced with completely different decisions to make and difficulties to encounter. There are so many layers to Starfield that you will find things you never knew were possible before or after playing for hundreds of hours. Even after completing the main story, your adventure doesn't end. You can continue New Game Plus to keep exploring Starfield and all that is out there. Never stop exploring. Bethesda customer support. Like, again, read the room. Like, you're basically arguing with a review. Be like, no, it's not boring. It's fun. It's crazy. There's no evidence of this, to be fair. Okay, this is just pure speculation. I've said for, at this point, like a year and a half, 2 years, I think a lot of these responses were AI generated. Like, they really just come off as like, make a response to this review, calling out the cool features in Starfield. And we even did it on stream like a year ago. And we asked like ChatGPT to do that. And it came out with a response that was almost like word for word identical. So I don't know if there's a way to test it and see if there's like AI like behaviors or characteristics to the post, but I still think that a lot of these were AI generated, because human beings don't talk like this. Somebody had to sit down and write this out, and each of the responses is different. They weren't even copy and pasted. They were all different. So either they have staff that are spending like 20 minutes responding to each and every review, or it's just AI generated stuff. I don't know. Either way, it's dumb. Either way, it's crazy. Whoever's in charge of the customer support, like, they've across 7 years, or I guess at the time it was 5 years, they've had multiple scandals related to just the customer support team's response to the developer screw ups. It's very funny.
With fans, and their reputation is at an all-time low. You can ask anybody, and most will say that Bethesda is going through a tough time. Everyone, that is, except for Emil.
Emil and Todd. So in the interviews, I think it was the one Maddie did with Todd, Todd was framing it as, well, Starfield has the most players of any game we've ever made. It has the most engagement of any player, or of any game we've ever made. It has the highest average playtime of any game we've ever made. And he pointed to all these stats, which I'm sure are true. I'm sure they do have the highest total number of players and stuff like that because of Game Pass and all that. But I don't think there's any way to deny the current status and reputation. I don't think you can ignore that. I think it's pretty obvious that they're not in the same position they were 10 years ago. In the lead up to Fallout 4, I think their company reputation was much different than it is today. And I think denying that is silly. And I don't know if Todd would agree with that maybe now they're viewed more skeptically or maybe suspiciously, but either way.
Who says they're at their peak, and fans are basically too stupid to see it. I never want to blame any one person for a whole company's collapse or put pressure on one individual, but this guy has said so many outlandish things recently that I have to say something. So in this video, I will explain how Emil got to where he is, how it has a direct correlation with Bethesda's decline, and I will show why he is a huge problem for the studio, even today.
Convince me. My perspective on Emil is I think he is very good at certain things. Like Todd gave the example in I think it was the Making of Skyrim documentary, where Todd said at one point he just turned to Emil and said, hey, can you come up with some sort of like chant for the trailer or something? Just something that sounds mysterious and cool. And so Emil went home and like wrote in the in-game language, whatever the lyrics for the chant that they would use in the trailer and stuff. And he just like whipped it up. Like it was nothing. Like I do think he's a very capable, very creative and smart guy like that. I think he's very, very good. There's a reason he's in the role he is. It's not like he's a total buffoon or anything. He's not one of the like Ubisoft nepotism hires who only has his job literally because he's the son of the CEO. That's not what's happening here. He knows what he's doing, but I also think he's bad at certain things. As with everybody, you're good at some things, you're bad at other things. And I think the problem is that Emil has been put in a position where he's in charge of something he's not very good at, and he also has like an active contempt for it. Like you hear him talk about the writing of the stories and stuff, and he has this idea, at least it seems to me, that you don't need much depth with a lot of these things because people will make paper airplanes out of your great American novel. People will find ways to mess around and not take your story seriously, not engage with it seriously. So you don't need to put that much depth into it. And even if you did, it's probably going to just be wasted. So your resources are better spent creating a quantity of content instead of just a high quality of content, which maybe is perfectly fine for the average Bethesda game. But I think the industry has changed from 2011 when people understood in Skyrim, you're going to get pretty shallow experiences. You're going to go to the College of Winterhold or whatever, and you're going to become the lead professor within 20 minutes of gameplay. Like, people understand that it's a pretty shallow experience, but in 2011 that was fine. I think in 2025 and moving into like 26, 27, 28, when we get Elder Scrolls 6, expectations are higher. People are expecting Witcher 3 quality, Baldur's Gate quality. People are expecting Expedition 33 quality writing. And when they don't deliver that, they will be chastised and critiqued against it because the industry has changed. It's just like when Baldur's Gate 3 came out and everybody was like, you know, you remember hearing the developer say, don't let this game raise your expectations too much because this game is exceptionally amazing. Don't let it raise the bar. And it's like, no, that's what happens. The bar gets raised because we've seen it is possible. It is possible to achieve this amazing thing. So that's what we're going to expect now. I think the bar has been raised, but I think BGS has largely not raised the bar in response, you know?
So kick back, relax, and let's get this one started. Quick side note, if you're new here and you enjoy video game discussions, please consider subscribing.
Yeah.
That is all. So first of all, let's cover the story of Emil Pagliarulo. He is Bethesda's lead writer and helped write stories in Fallout 3, Skyrim, and Fallout 4. Originally involved in the development of Thief 2, The Metal Age, he then moved over to Bethesda Game Studios, helping in the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind expansion, Blood Moon. At Bethesda, his first task was creating miscellaneous quests for the Blood Moon expansion. He then worked as a designer on the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, largely for the Arena and the Dark Brotherhood. After his successful writing in Oblivion, he was elevated to lead writer on Bethesda titles, and in 2011 he served as a senior designer on the Elder Scrolls Skyrim. After this, he went on to write in Fallout 4 and Starfield. Pagliarulo also worked on Fallout 76 as the design director. In 2022, it was uncovered by Kotaku that the development of Fallout 76 suffered massive mismanagement from top-level executives.
No. No.
With one developer stating that, during development, our design director, Emil, didn't seem to want to be involved with the product at all. He didn't want to have any contact with it, or read anything that we put in front of him. Pagliarulo refused to comment on Kotaku when asked to give his side of the story.
No. No. Dude, that's crazy. If it is true that they were trying to get Emil, who's like placed in charge of the project, they're like, hey, can you sign off on this? Can you tell us what you think of this system or this idea or that? And he's like, no. That's crazy. That's wild. It's pretty unprofessional. I don't know if it's true. Of course, it's just at this point it's hearsay. It's he said, she said. But if it was false, and if he was like, no, I worked with them very closely, we're very proud of it, you'd think he'd just respond to Kotaku and say something. But I don't know. Before he left Twitter, I did ask him if he wanted to do an interview, and he never responded to me. Can't say I blame him. It seems like, you know, he'd like to stay within his bubble, which so be it. I'm trying to help, man. I'm trying to help you make games that you're like will love. You know, I'm a fan of BGS games. I like BGS games. I think they could return to greatness, but they refuse. A lot of the people higher ups in BGS refuse to engage with anybody who's even slightly critical. It's like, unless you're considered a fan, they just are like, no, whatever. They just don't engage with you. It's quite funny. It's quite funny.
Emil then worked on Starfield as the design director and the lead writer. So now, let's revisit the history of Bethesda games and how well they did. I'm going to start at Morrowind, when Bethesda really took off. Coming out in 2002, it sold 4 million copies and it received stellar reviews. It captured the true open world RPG feeling, and still to this day, it has a strong fan base. It got 9.4 out of 10 from IGN, 4.7 stars on Google, and 87 on Metacritic. It was a strong game and it put Bethesda onto the map. It exceeded in role-playing elements, dialogue, and writing. Then, in 2006, Oblivion arrived. Emil had a hand in this game writing the Dark Brotherhood questline, which was quite good to be fair, but his role was limited outside of that. Oblivion released in 2006 and it sold 9.5 million copies. It got a 9.4 out of 10 from IGN and 94 on Metacritic. Then, Fallout 3 came out, and Emil served...
Dude, never forget just how green Fallout 3 is in its vanilla form. There are some mods that fix it and like remove the green filter over everything. But dude, this game was so green and still is if you down it. It's crazy, man. It's like, you remember back in the late 2000s, every game kind of had that brown hue. Everything was brown. It was really weird. I don't know why this was the meta to just make everything green. We did watch one video where I think they were describing how it had something to do with the TV technology at the time, where on our displays, the color like representation is much clearer, but on like CRT TVs and in older TVs, like even plasmas, it didn't appear this way to their eye at the time. Like the image just appeared differently. I don't know. Either way, very green.
As the lead writer for this game.
Oh yeah, the piss filter. Yeah.
It sold 12.4 million copies and scored well, and then Skyrim would come out 3 years later and represent the peak of Bethesda games. Again, Emil was the lead writer for this too. Now, something I want to mention about Skyrim. There was already a ton of lore established at this point. Emil did not need to create any of the backstory, characters, factions, or world building, as it was already established. He would use those tools to write storylines and quest lines. Now, most people would say Skyrim is a magical game for its open world, exploration, role-playing elements, but very few would say it's for its writing. Most characters were forgettable, most quest lines were too, barring a few good entries, and the main story, well, most people never actually finished it. Why? Well, the writing doesn't keep you hooked. In fact, many argue that Oblivion's writing was much better than Skyrim's. They would say that Skyrim improved on almost everything Oblivion did except for its writing and role-playing options. So
I think Skyrim in a lot of ways, I think it did what few games managed to do, but it pierced the veil of mainstream appeal. And not many games can do that. You know, when you think of games that do that, I mean, Call of Duty, of course, can do it regularly. Fortnite can do it, World of Warcraft, of course. A great bellwether is whether it's mentioned in like a South Park episode. That's a great way. So like Red Dead 2, they had an entire episode about Red Dead. And, if they can pierce the pop culture veil and get into the mainstream, your game's going to sell gangbusters no matter what. And in the case of Skyrim, it definitely did that. But for the time, it gave everybody exactly what they were hoping for. It was just a vast, expansive game. It was an open world game before open worlds were really the meta. It's part of the reason open worlds became the meta. And, it was just exciting. It was open-ended. It was free. And it was just, it was a remarkable game for the time. But I do agree that the writing and the depth of narratives and stuff was never the strong suit. There's some interesting quest lines. There's some interesting ideas there. But I mean, I think you play the Bloody Baron quest line in The Witcher 3. That story will stick with you for the rest of your life. Whereas recalling specifics of like certain quest lines within Skyrim's main story might be kind of difficult, And I mean, I know some people have referenced, knowing somebody who hasn't finished the main story of Skyrim. The stats show not a ton of people finish the main story in Skyrim, even though it's only like 30 hours. But I know like some good friends of mine from high school who have put hundreds, or I think he said he put like 1,200 hours in or something, and he's never seen the credits roll because he just like swaps mods out and plays different mods and stuff within Skyrim, and it's just kind of like a playground for mods for him. So I think that that's a big part of it too. Part of the long-lasting and ongoing legacy of Skyrim as well is that as a mod platform, it's very robust, and that means that a lot of people can still engage with it and have fun with it, even if they're not engaging with Bethesda content within it,
So, Skyrim was not a very good game in terms of writing, I would argue, but it excelled at everything else. But the lore held it together. The Mages Guild, great concept, great lore. The Mages Guild questline, not so good. But no matter what, when the writing was done, it was held up with a well-established lore to help make the workload easier. If you think I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. And then in 2015, Fallout 4 dropped, and this is when the problems began to surface. Emil was the lead writer and director for this game. Now it scored pretty well across the board, but it held a user score of 7 out of 10 on Metacritic. Now I've done a video on why Fallout 4 is divisive, but I'm going to summarize it here. The gameplay was better than 3, the world was bigger, quality of life changes were better, the modding community had more. Just in general, it was a better game than 3, but not so much in writing. Fallout 3 was known for outstanding character writing, riveting side quest stories, and a really good main quest. Fallout 4 followed the pattern of Skyrim in terms of writing. It wasn't great.
Well, I think Fallout 4, I think, with Skyrim, with Fallout 4, they take an approach that is, again, quantity over quality. And then I think it's also a general approach of like a popcorn writing as opposed to like trying to make an entree. They're trying to make appetizers. They're trying to make little things that you can take. Ooh, that was good. Let me go over here. Oh, that was good. A little bit of this. That was good. That's what they're trying to do with like Skyrim and Fallout 4, and even Starfield to a certain extent. But the problem is sometimes players want a steak. Sometimes players want a beef Wellington. Sometimes they even just want a big old burger. They just want something greasy and dirty, but there's a lot there, And I think that's been one of the points of weakness for them, has just been that they've really struggled to deliver on what the expectation is. And so there's just a lot of confusion. I've said repeatedly that I've gone back and I've actually had fun playing Fallout 4 again. I played through it on my ROG Ally again and had a pretty solid time. But I literally just ignored the main story entirely. Like I just ignored any semblance of like what I would expect good writing in. Ignore that. You can actually have a good time. You can actually eat it up. But I swear to God, if you go into it and you're trying to like find an intense story or something really moving and impactful, you're going to struggle to find it. Because it's one of those things where like the more you think about it, the weaker the story gets. And there's been other, videos and breakdowns of the narratives within Fallout 4 explaining like how contradictory it is and how many plot holes there are. But it's definitely not the strong suit for the story. So I would agree.
In fact, it was the main thing holding back Fallout 4 from being the outright better Fallout game. Emil also implemented a dialogue system unlike previous games, allowing players to choose from 4 vague responses.
This also, it's not clear if this was Emil. I mean, I guess as the lead writer, it would still land on him. But I remember Todd talking about it at the time. And the idea, it's also, I think, one of the big restrictions was the voiced protagonist. So they tried to go voice to make like a more intense story, have it voice acted and performed. But the problem was that when you have a voice actor doing all of the dialogue, you're limited. It's way more expensive to have more dialogue options because you have to have the voice actor go back into the booth and record the dialogue and all that. And the other problem is because they were trying to sum everything up into these 4 options. If I go back a little, just like that. Not my problem, come with me, see you around. What about good neighbor? They only have 3 words for each of these, but the response may be sentences long. So you may select a dialogue option, meaning it one way, like not my problem, trying to be like really terse and really, really sharp with your choice. Not my problem, I don't care. But it might end up being like, well, I guess I could try to help you, but it's not really and it comes off way weaker, So you might select a dialogue option and it ends up being delivered in a way that you did not expect it to be. There are mods though that fix that and turn it back into the standard text box where you can see all of the dialogue written out, and that tends to work way better.
Choose from 4 vague responses. It was generally not appreciated by fans, with even Todd Howard stating that it was a mistake.
Fallout 4 lead Todd Howard dialogue system didn't work as well. We do like to try new things. We have some successes. I think the shooting in Fallout 4 is really good. I think it plays really well. I would agree with that, honestly. Obviously, the way we did some dialogue stuff, that didn't work as well, but I know the reasons we tried that to make a nice interactive conversation, but it was less successful than some other things in the game. For us, we take that feedback, I think, long term, which is why they ended up pivoting away from it for Skyrim, or for even Fallout 76, but also for Starfield.
But in this same video that I showed you earlier, Emil created this dialogue system and claimed to be proud of it, despite Todd disagreeing.
Oh.
Another thing that hurt Fallout 4 was the release of Fallout New Vegas in 2010. Using the same engine and assets from Fallout 3 made by Bethesda, Obsidian were able to create a game in a short period of time that had fantastic writing, great side quests, great role-playing, and memorable characters. This game...
It also was super broken, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, the writing, I think, is the strong suit of Fallout New Vegas. I still think of some of these quest lines, even just like the Kings as a faction are so insane. But it's like, yeah, what if we had a faction in the game that was literally all just like frickin' Elvis impersonators? Or what if we had a faction that call themselves the Caesar's Legion. Kaiser. Hail Kaiser, or whatever it is. And they got all of their outfits from the Caesar's casino. And they go live off in the wilderness, but they have like just straight up Roman military procedures and everything. What if we just do that? Like, it's just brilliant. So much of it is just fantastic. It was not perfect. It still isn't perfect. It's why I've said I don't think a remaster of New Vegas works. I think they'd have to remake it and retain all the writing and stuff, but just polish it up. Like, imagine Fallout New Vegas, but with the shooting mechanics and gameplay and stuff of Fallout 4. I'm in that. I'm in for it, you know? I'm in for it. That would be amazing.
Identified the issues with the writing from Bethesda versus other game studios. After Fallout 4, Witcher 3 released the same year and blew that game out the water. At this point, gamers were used to stories being weak in a giant...
Interestingly, though, it was technically Witcher 3 launched in May. Fallout launched in, I believe, November. And so it was very interesting. The Witcher 3 launched actually quite buggy, but people forget that because it launched, it received great reviews. A good number of people played it, but The Witcher 3 really blew up after Fallout 4 because a lot of people were expecting like an intense RPG and narrative, and it wasn't there. And then people were telling through word of mouth, go play The Witcher 3. People went and played it, myself included. And we're like, oh my God, this is so much deeper and the writing is amazing. And by that point it was polished up and refined and it was incredible, you know? So The Witcher 3 actually kind of benefited from slowly swooping up into notoriety and success because people initially kind of slept on it. I mean, it did very, very well, reviewed very, very well, but I think the mainstream appeal hit after Fallout 4 did in like November and December, especially once it won Game of the Year. That really helped, of course, blow it up into popularity. So it's all part of it, but yeah.
Open world game. Usually you could either have a great story like The Last of Us, but in a linear experience, or you could have a giant open world with hundreds of side quests, but the writing wouldn't be as good. That was sort of like an unwritten rule. Then Witcher 3 came, then Red Dead Redemption 2, then other games, and the standards have changed. But even then, Emil had a lot of lore to fall back on for the Fallout games. Now if you ask Fallout 4 fans what they love about the game, it's usually the lore, the open world, exploration, the modding community. Very rarely is it the writing or the dialogue options. Sound familiar?
Unless you're a fan of like Fallout 1 and 2. If you're a fan of those old like isometric games, the writing in those games is actually pretty intense and quite good. But yeah, those are old school.
The pattern is being formed where the lore is protecting what is not really such great writing. Now let's fast forward to Starfield. This game dropped and it was...
Will Witcher 4 be buggy in a buggy state too then? Hopefully not. Because the thing is, Cyberpunk having tech issues at launch was sort of foretold in the scrolls because The Witcher 3 also released pretty buggy and they kind of got away with it because it started slow and then they patched it up by the time most people jumped into it. But the hope is after Cyberpunk's launch, they learned their lesson and will polish the ever-living hell out of it before launching it, which I think they will. They say they're developing it from scratch with 60 FPS console targets, so I think they'll probably be okay. Historically, Cyberpunk or CDPR, they develop for high-end PCs and then they try to scale down to consoles. For The Witcher 4, they're starting at consoles and then they'll scale up for PCs. So it should make it easier to polish it up because they're starting with the lowest common denominator, which is ideal. But anyway, I do agree with his sentiment so far from AVV Gaming. I do agree with the sentiment that standards have changed, but BGS has not changed with the times.
Hugely disappointing. It was not the game fans wanted. Look, I'm not going to go into detail about everything wrong with Starfield. I've done other videos.
I did an 8-hour video on that.
On that here, but I want to talk about the writing. There was no lore for this. Emil, as the lead writer and director, had to create his own stories, his own worlds, factions, and everything else. And what did we get? Cowboys in space, space pirates, farmers who live on the moon who have country accents like they're out in Georgia.
I was out planting in the fields when I saw some men approaching.
Yeah, that person lives on the moon. They live in space. And they sound like they're from Georgia. Georgia with that southern drawl. Reddit list. Thank you for the 10 months. Food. Thank you, my friend. I am quite hungry, and I'm trying to keep a lid on it because I'm bummed I missed her text about food. It's okay. I responded to Nikki, and I was like, oh, am I too late to ask for food? And she's like, yeah, just a little bit. Oops. Thank you for the sub, my friend. Starfield, I think there is something really to be said about this, because with Starfield, they're creating a new universe. Granted, it's our universe. I mean, they literally have planet Earth, and you can go to the St. Louis Arch and all that stuff. So like you can go see actual landmarks, from our universe in it. So it's not really a new universe entirely, but effectively you're creating factions, you're creating, space colonies, you're creating all of this. And all of that really did land at the end of the day on Emil's shoulders, on his desk. He had to figure out how to write that out and create a compelling world. And I just think like there is an element of subjectivism to this, because some people might find it really compelling. There are people that have 1,000 hours in Starfield and are eating it up. That's fine. But I personally, from my humble perspective, I found the world building to be fairly bland and generic. Like even something as simple as aliens. This is a game with space magic, which is why it's been called just Fallout Skyrim in space, because it basically is. Even though there's space magic and space wizardry that you can engage with, there are no aliens. You can explore the entire galaxy, and there's not a single alien species to be found except for like some crab-like creatures. Like there's no aliens that you can speak to, no conscious, like as far as we can tell and understand, there's nothing like that. No alien species to interact with and things like that. It was just weird. And everything just comes off, again, very generic. It's like we have the cowboy archetype, we have the pirate archetype, we have the space police military archetype. There's not even warring factions of those individual archetypes within them. There's the Crimson Fleet, but like, you might have, what is it, USC or something. They have like this faction, but there's not like, oh, over in this other star system, there's another governmental faction that's fighting with this one or that doesn't want this to overlap. Like it's all just very isolated, very generic. You might hear rumblings, or you might hear dialogue mentioning another faction that used to exist or that does exist. You just can't see them and interact with them. It felt so bland.
They look like soldiers with uniforms and weapons and such.
This is when the true writing skills of Emil and Bethesda were finally brought to light. It was poor. Compared to a game also set in space, Mass Effect had different races, aliens, backstories for planets, lots of different histories to explore. Starfield, only humans.
And here's the thing. Some people say, well, Luke, it's supposed to be hard sci-fi instead of soft sci-fi. So it's supposed to be more realistic, believable sci-fi, which is why it's like NASA punk instead of the more futuristic, shiny Mass Effect design. So we chose not to do aliens because we just, that's the route we chose to go, is that alien life that's intelligent is extremely rare, so we're not going to do that. That's fine, but it's still more boring. Like it is more boring to have just humans than it is to have a bunch of alien species. It's more interesting to have a lot more alien species, to have to learn about them, their cultures, their ways of life. Like that's just more interesting, It's like Nikki and I in the last month, we've been watching The Orville. I don't know if you guys ever watched The Orville. It's from Seth MacFarlane. He sort of did a spiritual successor to Star Trek: The Next Generation, and it's got some like light comedy. It's also kind of a drama. It's interesting. And I've been pleasantly surprised by it, honestly. It's actually quite fun. It's like nothing that's going to win any sort of Golden Globes or Emmys, I think is for TV. It's not going to win anything like that, but it's good. It's solid. It's fine. But even like the world of the Orville, I feel is way more interesting than all of Starfield. And it's made by the guy that did Family Guy and American Dad and like sing songs. I find it way more compelling than anything I ever encountered in Starfield. I would love to see an Orville mod for Starfield. I think that would actually be kind of compelling.
Basically, there were only a handful of planets with life. Factions included the Constellation, who were just explorers, United Colonies, who were like a republic, the Freestar Collective, who were libertarians, who are literally cowboys in space, Crimson Fleet, who...
They literally wear cowboy hats, yeah. It's like, even though there's no reason for that. And it's like, in New Vegas, there's reasons, narratively, for the kings to look like Elvis. Like, it's established in the world, it makes sense within that. Or for the people in Good Springs to dress and act the way that they do. They're Brahmin farmers. Like, that's just what they do. Or for Caesar's Legion to dress and act the way that they do. They live that way. Everything follows from it. But in this, it's like literally it's just, oh no, they're in space flying spaceships, but we're gonna have them wear cowboy hats and they all have Southern accents for some reason.
Who are literally pirates in space, and Ryujin Industries, who are a megacorp. That's it. Then the side quests were dreadfully dull. For the Ryujin questline, you have to go and get a coffee and bring it back to your boss. That's literally a main faction quest. You have an entire galaxy that you can write stories in, no limit, and we get, go grab me a Starbucks please, charge it on the company card. So many side quests were fetch quests.
Yeah. Thank you, Jack. Thank you for the 5. Very generous. Thank you. Literally doing a coffee delivery quest in a main story quest line for Starfield. I also this is supposed to be a big hub, like the city of neon. And I'm sorry, this is also where the standards just change. If you're going to create a city, there are certain expectations in the modern day for what that city is going to be like. And having a small corridor with 35 people in it does not feel like a city. You could get away with that in Whiterun in 2011. Nowadays, people expect Novigrad. People expect Oxenford. People expect Baldur's Gate. People expect the massive expanse of a city. Like, the standards have changed, you know? The expectations change. They expect Night City, exactly. Like, doing it in this old school way, it's understandable if you're making a AA game, but when you're making a AAA game and you're framing it as that, it doesn't work.
Where you'd meet someone on a planet and they'd say, hey, about 15 galaxies over that way, there's a bar in a city on a planet that sells this awesome root beer. Can you go grab me one? I'm not joking. This is a real quest in that game. And the characters were so...
Hey, in 5 solar systems over, can you go get me a root beer? It's like, yeah, that makes sense. That checks out. It's like, it is so stupid. If you think about it too much, it'll just depress you because it's so dumb.
So one-dimensional. The dialogue was incredibly boring. You didn't want to ask questions. You would zone out and not listening because it was all so dull.
Because even in the studio, when we're playing it, people wanted to skip dialogue, right? They could read the subtitles quicker than they could listen. Or some.
Dude, that's not good. He's describing how in the studio they'd want to skip dialogue. How is that not a wake-up call? I mean, how does that not give you, maybe we should make the dialogue more compelling? It's ridiculous. It's really is self-revealing, you know? Here he's discussing how in Fallout 4 the staff in their own studio found the dialogue boring and wanted to skip. Shows they learned nothing with Starfield, as Starfield had even more dialogue in the same manner.
Sometimes they just weren't interested in what an NPC had to say.
Sometimes they're just not interested in what an NPC has to say, and then Starfield has 250,000 lines of dialogue. Yeah, again, it gives the impression that, okay, if they're gonna make paper airplanes out of our great American novel, let's just throw a few dictionaries in there too. You know, give them plenty of paper. Give them plenty of paper to mess with.
You're given companions from the Constellation group, and it's an online joke that everybody dislikes them because of the fact that they're so boring, and they have no personalities that are different from one another. But you could just tell the writing felt like it was written for young children. Plot lines were predictable. Plot twists didn't really shock anyone. It was all so basic. And this brings me to a quote that Emil said himself.
Write what you know.
He knew America. He knew pirates, cowboys, and farmyards, and he decided just to move that to the stars. This shows such a lack of creativity. When you have a giant universe of thousands of planets and you can write whatever you want, and the best you can come up with is cowboys and pirates, come on, man. So what I'm trying to...
Yeah, why not a faction of intergalactic traveling koala bears that were part of a scientific experiment that escaped a lab in Wuhan? And then they went and they stole a spaceship, took off, landed on a planet in a distant solar system, evolved over the generations. So now they excrete gummy versions of themselves that provide psychedelic effects to humans who consume it. So you are tasked with going and massacring a village of space koala bears to steal their gummy feces as a drug to sell within Neon. I feel like that would have been more compelling than anything in Starfield. And I just pulled that out of my ass. But like, at least that's something. At least that's a thing. That's a quest line that's not fetching a coffee, you know? That's at least a thing. The drugs are koala poop. Yes, space koala poop. Yep. Yep.
Show is that Bethesda's writing has never been that great. It has always been below what is acceptable nowadays in gaming, but it was always protected by an established lore or a giant open world which was so fun to explore that writing took the back seat. Then games like Witcher 3, Red Dead Redemption 2, God of War came along and standards went up, and Bethesda couldn't keep up. As a result, once Emil and
that's the thing is, I don't even feel like they couldn't keep up. I feel like they didn't try. Because Bethesda does make a very unique kind of game that is not actually that common. Because they make like big sandboxes, and like he's saying, the story kind of takes a back seat, and that works if the sandbox is fun. The moment that the sandbox is weak, everything falls apart, like we saw with Starfield. But I just don't think they even tried. I mean, Fallout 4, at least with the voice protagonist, they were trying a little bit more. They had a more structured narrative. It's just the problem was the narrative wasn't that good. But in the case of them as a company, I feel like they aren't even really trying to keep up or compete with The Witcher 3 or, you know, certainly Baldur's Gate, because we haven't seen a game come out after Baldur's Gate from them since I think Starfield launched like 3 weeks after Baldur's Gate did, so, you know, obviously wasn't influenced by it. But I think they've just tried not to compete. They haven't even tried. And as a result, they've just fallen completely behind. Like, by the time they've realized that they're behind, which I still don't think they have realized that. I think they are kind of in their own bubble thinking they don't need to compete when it comes to writing and consequence within the stories. I think if they realize today that that's where they're at, it's just, they're so far behind.
His team had to write a game with no established lore, it all came crashing down. Now you might say, well, there's more than one writer, why are you picking on poor Emil? Well, I'll tell you why. He is a huge reason why the standards at Bethesda have not progressed and have actually regressed. But that isn't what makes Emil delusional. This man is actually so far detached from his fans, and I want to cover a few things. First of all, let's talk about this speech from Talks, where he discussed video game writing techniques at a conference.
Because I'm interested in this bit, because saying somebody's delusional is a big statement that I think you have to back up with some evidence. I think there's been things he's done that are certainly out of touch, and same with Todd, same with everybody. But I'm interested to see what this is.
First of all, his rule.
Yes. Keep it simple, stupid.
He says how he...
Yes, we can tell that you have tried very hard to keep it simple. You've kept the stories very simple.
Likes to keep writing to one or two central themes which he feels is enough, i.e. the player won't get any deeper meaning, it'll confuse them. Have to make it simple. Then he uses the movie Casablanca as an example of a film that keeps it simple, saying it's one of his favourite movies ever. But that film literally...
How funny would it be if he just like pulled up like Barney the dinosaur goes on vacation and it's like, this is my inspiration. It's like, oh, he really does mean keep it simple. Oh, okay, wow.
He had multiple themes, and that's what made it a good film. It had several...
I do think it's funny to say that movie is really simple.
Several deeper meanings, and this is the film he used as an example. He mentions other films saying that they only have one real central theme, but they actually have a lot more. But this speech shows he honestly feels that fans of his games can't handle more than one central theme, that it would go over their head. Then he says, great games are played, not made.
This is something that he and Todd have said for years and years and years and years, is great games are played, not made. And it used to be, this is like pre-Fallout 4 era, it used to be something they would say because they did not use any QA testing, like they didn't do any sort of like active QA contracting or anything like that. They played all their games, they tested them, it was all internal, they didn't, you know, do play testing. That's what I'm thinking of, not QA. They had QA, they wouldn't do play testing. That apparently changed with Fallout 76, where they did a lot of play testing, and with Starfield, they did a lot of play testing. So that's changed now, so they haven't used this slogan much, but it was a saying they used to throw around a ton.
As if to say, the story is completely ignored by players, they don't even want it, they want to make their own. In fact, this is where he says they'd rather spend hours building shacks. The whole video...
in his defense, from what I recall, the great games are played, not made. Typically, they use that in reference to like, we make games we want to play. We make games that we want to play, not games that, you know, the surveys say we need to make, not the games that the spreadsheets say we need to make based on these player stats and everything, which is also somewhat ironic because he's literally saying that why try really hard with the story when players are going to spend this many hours and this, like he's reading it off of a spreadsheet on how many hours players spent with different things. But still, I don't think he meant it quite in that dismissive way, but I could be mistaken.
Video is in the description and you have to watch it. Now, some may say this is harsh, but what I get from that video is the impression that he honestly dislikes his own fans, that he thinks...
I don't know if it's dislike. I think he just, the word I've used is contempt. Maybe it's like he thinks it's like maybe like a belittled view. I don't know. What's the word? You guys can help me out here. It's something where like, he just doesn't think highly of the audience, you know, of Bethesda gamers. He thinks that, you know, too complex of a narrative, it'll be wasted on them because they can't appreciate it. They'll make paper airplanes out of your great story because they just can't appreciate it. They don't understand it. Resentment, maybe cynical. Yeah, maybe cynical is the right word, Luke. I think that might be right. Yeah, it's like a cynical outlook towards the fan base where I think you can write compelling stories and people will find it compelling. And I think there's plenty of examples of games where there are deep, intense narratives that are not for the faint of heart, as, you know, going back to the Bloody Baron questline. And I think that shows how well the audience will react to a pretty intense story. I mean, Bloody Baron questline is not for the faint of heart. If you've not played it, go play it. I will not spoil it for you, but like it handles some tough subject matter that is not simple. I mean, it's hardcore. Or the Hearts of Stone story. That one's also pretty hardcore. So I just feel like, you know, gamers have matured, and maybe it comes from how long he's been in the game, that he's been doing this for like 2 decades. 2.5, 3 decades, whatever it may be. Because he worked on Morrowind, which was 2002. So he's probably been in the industry for like 2.5, 3 decades. But, you know, the games he was making back in 2002, if they were appealing to a certain audience, the people who were playing those games, like Fallout 3, Morrowind, Oblivion, it's been 20 years. Some of those people are now in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and they were in their teens or 20s when they first played those games. And as, you know, those people grow up, they look for deeper stories. When you're 13, you may be okay with a pretty lighthearted Skyrim-esque story, because, you know, the deeper storylines and plot lines, maybe, yeah, you genuinely can't appreciate those. But as you grow older, you do hunger for those deeper stories. You know, you do hunger for some more complexity, for some more depth. That's good. And you're going to go places where you can find it. Just doesn't seem like you're going to find it in one of their games, you know? Unfortunately. Patronizing. Yeah, maybe patronizing is also, it's a very dismissive, patronizing attitude to be like, well, you gamers can't appreciate it. We need to keep it simple for you because you're so stupid. Like, it comes off that way. Maybe he doesn't mean it that way, but it does. Bada bing, Emil misunderstands that players who choose to play those ways are choices they are making. If you do not put effort into other parts of the game, are you really giving choices for what parts to enjoy? Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. There are players who will spend 30 hours building bases. That's true. There are also players who will spend 10, 20, 30 hours reading the notes and getting as deeply invested in the lore as they possibly can, that will listen to every dialogue option because they want to learn about the characters and get immersed in it. But if you're not putting effort into it because you're like, yeah, but other players aren't going to do it, it's dumb. It's like the analogy that AVV brought up at the beginning of the video where it's like, yeah, so statistically, the vast majority of people are not going to watch this entire video all the way through. So why bother finishing it? It's like, by his logic, why not just stop making the video halfway through? It's a good point. It's a really good analogy. I really like it.
Thinks his fans aren't very bright. They don't understand deep stories and they don't want them. They don't want good dialogue options with decision making because it'll confuse them. They want to build shacks for hours. Keep it simple, stupid. Now, besides showing how weak his writing style was and showing his disdain for his own fans' intelligence, it was the first video I saw where I thought, uh-oh, Bethesda are in trouble here. This guy doesn't even get his own fans. So Starfield drops, reviews are bad, and everybody shares their opinion.
I will say reviews were actually pretty good for Starfield at launch. Player sentiment, though, dried up real quick. I think, I'd have to pull up the Metacritic to check, but the reviews weren't necessarily bad. There were some like mediocre reviews that were like in the 7 out of 10 range. We're like, it's fine. It's fine. It's good. It's fine. But yeah, it's like I think the consensus was right around that like C. It's like you'll C's get degrees. Like you'll pass. It's fine. But I think, once players started to put in 12 hours, 24 hours, and they started seeing the same locations repeated over and over again, that's when the player sentiment really twisted and
It's no
shifted.
secret fans are upset with Starfield. So how did Bethesda respond? Well, they replied to every negative review on Steam, saying that the fans were wrong. They carefully dissected every criticism in each review and then explained why the player was wrong. Starfield is fun, they're just not playing it right. And then Emil said this in an interview: fans really want Elder Scrolls 6. I think in a lot of ways, Starfield is the hardest thing Bethesda has ever done.
Probably.
We pushed ourselves to make something totally different, to just jam into an Xbox the biggest, richest space simulation RPG anyone could imagine. That we pulled it off makes Starfield something of a technical marvel.
I mean, pulling it off, I think, is what's up for debate. Like, yes, technically, you have 1,000 planets that you can generate, and you can go on those planets anywhere other than the oceans. Yes, technically, that is true. But I think the execution was so poor that players felt like it was basically the game would have been better if you didn't do it at all.
It's also, in a lot of ways, the best game we've ever made. But for us, most importantly, Starfield has its own unique personality and now sits right next to Fallout and the Elder Scrolls.
I do remember when this quote came out, and, it was specifically the part where he says, in a lot of ways, it's the best game we've ever made. And I think even among hardcore Bethesda fans, that felt so out of touch and so delusional, which I think is the point of delusion that he's bringing up. Because it's just when I think of delusion, I think of somebody rejecting reality and substituting their own. Like, they're ignoring what everybody else sees to instead stick to the reality that they would be more comfortable within. But I honestly don't know how you could, like, by what metric, because he says in a lot of ways, in what ways is it the best game you've ever made? Like, I'm guessing probably, now that I think about it, he's probably pointing to like the peak concurrent player counts. He's probably pointing to like total users. He's pointing to those same stats that Todd mentioned, where a lot of people tried it. A lot of people booted it up and gave it a shot. And that means that, that it must have been really successful, and it must have been, the best game in terms of performance that we've ever put out. I do think it also was like the least buggy game that they've put out at launch, for sure. I think that that's probably fair. But in terms of like the best game, like as a product, as a package, I don't know how you could say that. But
it might not be everybody's cup of tea, but what is? We created a new IP from the ground up and an experience that is absolutely unique on consoles. And I'm not saying Starfield is better or worse than any other game, just different in what we offer. It's that weird Bethesda blend of immersion, action, and RPG. But it's also different to Bethesda's other RPGs. Starfield is developing its own unique fan base. It's big, and it's growing. Bethesda used to feel...
That would go on to age poorly. Because it stopped growing and then started to shrink quite aggressively.
Feel like the studio of the Elder Scrolls. Then it was the studio you'd associate with Elder Scrolls and Fallout. Now, it's Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and Starfield. Bethesda Game Studios, Big Three.
Yep. It is now part of the Big Three. People associate Bethesda Game Studios with Starfield, but I think that maybe be more, it might be more harmful than helpful. At least in my circles and in most online circles. I feel like you bring up Starfield, the general average reaction is not one of like, oh, that game's so good. It's like, oh, that game was disappointing. And unfortunately, I feel like that's the reaction people have generally to the game.
So at this point, you're starting to see a massive disconnect from Emil and the fans. He is literally saying, we think the game's great, fans just don't get it. It again shows a lack of respect for fans, arrogance, and also tone-deafness. If I made a video and it got a 90% dislike rate, I would not make other videos just to say how that's the best video ever and fans who don't like it just don't get it. But that's what Emil did. It was
Maybe not 90%, but even if we tone it back and we say it's mixed, like 50% loved the video, 50% thought, or maybe it's more like 15% loved the video, 15% hated the video, and 70% thought the video was eh. For you to still say it's in a lot of ways best game we've ever made or best video we've ever made would be weird.
It's terrible timing, and it showed a lack of humility from the company. But you're seeing a pattern emerge. They get criticism, constructive a lot of times, and then they snap back. Starfield is amazing. Fans just don't get it. It's too complicated for them. It's the best thing ever. It's got loads of fans and growing. We know what we're doing. They know better, and why would they care what their own fans have to say about their games anyway?
Well, I think the easiest thing is to dismiss criticism as coming just from haters. You know, what's been said before is that it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And the perception is that if you, what's happened a lot from my perspective is that there's been a lot of people within these companies that look at critiques and criticisms and negative feedback as just haters, because there is a subset of people that do just get to the point where it goes too far. I don't think Starfield's very good. The reason why I vocalize this and we talk about it is because I find it interesting, but fundamentally at the end of the day, I'm a Bethesda fan. I want them to be successful. I want to enjoy their games like I used to. I feel like they are just actively making mistakes repeatedly that will lead to them not making those games. So I'm trying to vocalize my frustration, so hopefully they respond to it and can take some of it to heart, and who knows, maybe I'll like the next game more. But there are people that will just say, nope, worst game ever made, it's trash, 0 out of 10, which is like hyperbolic, you know? And so they look at that and they say, okay, so therefore people who don't like our game are haters. We can ignore them. They were never our fans. They were never going to like it. Ignore them. And that's where you can get into trouble, because there are valid critiques to be made by people who maybe are a little abrasive in how they say it. They may joke around. They may be a little silly. They may joke about it. They may have candles of Todd randomly that they put up. But that doesn't mean that their critiques are invalid or should be dismissed. You know, I think that doesn't necessarily follow, but I think that's what happens. I think they get dismissed as haters, and so we don't have to acknowledge them. You know, and you can tell it because it's not just about who they choose to interact with, who they talk to, and who they accept feedback from, but it's who they don't talk to and who they don't accept feedback from. Todd's done a handful of interviews, even in the lead up to Starfield, but notably he only went on like Xbox podcasts where they have, you know, they're considered to be in friendly territory. Even like the neutral territory, unless it was like a big outlet, like I think he did an interview with like Rolling Stone or Washington Post or something like that. He'll go there, but you don't see him going and doing more generalized interviews with streamers or YouTubers and stuff, unless they're considered to be friendly. And I think that that's just unfortunate. You know, because I think staying in your bubble is how you can end up continuing to make mistakes and get into trouble. He did go on Lex's podcast. That's true. But I think Lex is probably a pretty, you know, it's fairly safe, friendly territory. You know, I'm not saying that, you know, Todd needs to go into the lion's den. I'm not saying Todd needs to go into like, you know, a hardcore BGS haters chat and debate his games and defend it. I'm not saying that. That would, of course, be ridiculous. But I think, again, we haven't really seen him interact with, or any of these guys interact or talk with anybody who didn't like Starfield. Like, they just ignore them and pretend like they don't exist, you know? And it's like, that. I don't think that's super helpful. I'd respect it a lot more if they went on and talked to people who didn't think it was good, you know? And that would help.
Now we fast forward to Shattered Space, the recent DLC for Starfield. I did a video on this, but the point is, it got slaughtered. It was awful and unacceptable. And
yeah, I think Shattered Space continued the trend of just being really mediocre. Even this review, it's more Starfield with even more tropes injected into it. The opening is literally just Event Horizon, for fuck's sake. Charging the same price as Phantom Liberty is ridiculous, and having B-tier hacks like, I can't read the rest because the bar's in front of it. It's Emil. I see Emil's name though. I think that, again, this just betrayed the larger problem, which was just that it was mediocre But charging this much for something mediocre was just unacceptable. And it was so short after waiting so long, a full year. It was ridiculous. It was wild that they thought that this would satisfy players. But I still remember when I got it, I downloaded it and I played it. I accidentally finished it within like 5 hours. And I tweeted out, I was like, I think I just accidentally finished Shattered Space. Dude, people came at me so hard. The BGS Xbox fans came at me so hard because like, oh, you rushed through it. You rushed through it. Yeah, Ark remembers. You rushed through it. You weren't being fair. You're being dismissive. You're freaking out over it. And then people actually played it. And it was really funny because you could watch in real time. People got home from work. They booted it up. And by 10 p.m. that night, most people had finished it. So the tweet, skyrocketing. People are freaking out, losing their minds. And then after a few hours, the responses stop. The threads on Reddit disappear. And then all of the other feedback over the DLC started to flood in of people being like, okay, yeah, no, it's pretty bad. It's like, it's pretty crappy. It's pretty abysmal. It was quite funny because you could watch it in real time as people finished it. They'd go back, delete their comments, and it was very funny.
You know what Emil said? Here, I'll put it on the screen. Any Bethesda developer who's been around since the Horse Armor days knows that by this point, if we understand one thing, it's DLC.
Dude, this gives off the energy of like, we're not laughing with you, we're laughing at you. Like the Horse Armor DLC, like, okay, we did Horse Armor. If you've been around with us since then, you know we know DLC. It's like, bro, people refer to that as like the start of the end of gaming. Like, what are you talking about?
Pretty strange that he uses Horse Armor as the benchmark here, but anyway. That's not to say we're on autopilot and don't think about it now. It means we still think about it and have probably thought about it more than any other studio since those early days.
You think about it more than any other studio. Then why is your DLC like garbage? What do you mean? What do you mean? You've been thinking about it so much. You like what? Okay, like this is straight up delusion. I would say I'm convinced at this point. To suggest that you are better at DLC and you know it better than most and like you've got it figured out when you're putting out Shattered Space. And bear in mind, this same year they released Phantom Liberty. Or was that the year before? I think it was the same year. They dropped Phantom Liberty. Or no, was Phantom Liberty 2023? When was Phantom Liberty? September 26th, 2023. So the year before. Alexa, stop. Alexa, stop. It's fine. She's trying to help. Sometimes she can be a bit much if you're asking me. Anyway, I mean, Phantom Liberty launches the year before as an expansion is so good. A lot of people claim it's the full redemption. It could have been a standalone game as far as I'm concerned. It was so good. Idris Elba's performance alone was phenomenal. But like, you're claiming that you think about DLC more than any other studio since those early days. The result of all that contemplating is games is that we have a pretty good handle on how to plug new content into our huge games. Like at this point, you gotta want, like, who is he talking to? Like, what is going on in the studio if he honestly believes that? The thing with Todd is, I'll make fun of Todd because he, I think, has the salesmanship down. Like, he'll schmooze, you know, he'll say things like, oh, Todd, tell us about the people that didn't like your game. Well, a lot of people loved our game and some people loved it less. It's like, he'll say stuff like that. And you're like, you know what you're doing. He's aware, he's just twisting it. With this is just like self-deception. Like, I don't even know what the hell this is. It's got to just be saving face. I don't know, dude. Like, if he was trying to save face, you think he'd be acknowledging it? He's like, yeah, so we try to put out a product that we, you know, makes sense for the budget that we have, for the time that we have. You'd think he'd frame it in a way where it can explain what it is, but he's framing it as though it goes head to head with what any other studio does.
And I think the result of all that contemplating is we have a pretty good handle on how to plug new content into our huge games. So his initial response to releasing a weak DLC was to say, we're the kings of DLC. Like, have you played Blood and Wine, Shadow of the Erdtree, Phantom Liberty? This DLC was an insult at $30 compared to those two.
Dude, I forgot it was $30. Yeah, it was literally insane that they thought that this was acceptable going head to head to the others. But that's what he's saying. I mean, he's suggesting that he goes head to head with any other studio. I think he means they understand DLC more because they got backlash for the horse armor before microtransactions were even a thing. I don't know. I think that's what he means. Well, the impression I get is he's saying we've been thinking about DLC for our games since before DLC was a thing, because we basically started it. So we've been thinking about DLC, working on DLC since before anybody else. So we really know what we're doing. I think that's how he's framing it. But again, it's so like out of touch to think that we therefore will be like, okay, yeah, they know what they're doing. No, we kind of blame you for starting this whole mess. Like, you guys started it. We're not like, thank you for making horse armor DLC. You know, it's so crazy.
And fans online said the same. But look at that response. Now, a pure Xbox post came out after the DLC dropped with the headline, Starfield design director defends Shattered Space DLC after mixed reviews. Now, mixed reviews is an understatement, as on Steam right now, it's sitting at a mostly negative rating, which is a record even for Bethesda.
I'm trying to read the positive. This DLC cannot put a pimple on the ass of Phantom Liberty, sure, but it's actually unreal how many people deluded themselves into thinking this was going to be a home run fix-all for Starfield. This DLC is just more Starfield. If you liked base Starfield, you liked the DLC. It does nothing different, for better or worse. I personally enjoy the game as unfinished as a lot of it seems. Starfield still scratches a specific itch for me. No other game, particularly not Scam Citizen or No Man's Sky, can feel. I recommend this only on a deep sale. We'll keep it short, but I feel after doing all of the quests in the DLC has to offer, I can give you some thoughts. 25 hours of content. We do all of the quests and go for all of the achievements and read lore / app optional dialogue. Dude, if we're counting reading all optional dialogue and all like lore drops and papers and books and stuff, that's crazy. CJ the Misfit, thank you for the 10. The only thing I can think of is that he thinks we're at war with Star Citizen and is crushing them with what they're doing with Starfield. Maybe, but again, like it's why I said with the gameplay comparisons, they have entered themselves into the same realm as like No Man's Sky, you know, like by putting out a space exploration procedurally generated game, you're entering into the realm of Star Citizen, you're entering into the realm of No Man's Sky, of Elite Dangerous, of all of these other games like this, and you're going to be compared to them. And I feel like, you know, Star Citizen, sure, it's got really impressive tech, but it doesn't have the narrative stuff Starfield does. So yeah, maybe you could say that this does that better. But space exploration, I think Star Citizen does it better. I think No Man's Sky does it better. Base building, you know, player freedom and stuff like that, I think No Man's Sky does it better. There's just a lot of other things, you know, once you try to play that game of comparison to other games in this genre, you might get kind of screwed. Could this just be incompetence by way of hubris? Yeah. I don't think that helps. I don't think that's better. Like the decision of or the distinction of whether this is like delusion, willful delusion, or like unintentional delusion, if it's that he honestly just does not know how people feel about it, or if he's just choosing to only listen to the positive voices and ignore everything else. I'm not sure if it really matters at the end of the day. My impression is, especially like he had to walk back some of these statements that he's making. So he was aware of the negative reaction. He was aware that people did not feel the same way and were even mocking him for making these statements. And he walked it back. And I believe he deleted his X profile completely and now is only on Blue Sky because the reception was getting overwhelming, let's just say. So I think he's aware of it. I think he's just choosing to ignore it. And anybody who is being negative towards it or brings up these comments, they're just haters.
People did not like it at all. But his response on X said this: X has never been a place for polite discourse, but I'd like to address what I can. I don't like leaving fans hanging.
Yeah, bear in mind, after this, he deleted his account. I can check for it again here in a second, but I'm pretty sure he deleted it.
In fact, I generally say more than I should. We have a community team for a reason, but I think a bridge to the devs is important. First, the interview.
That's why I'm deleting my account.
As a design director, sometimes I'm asked or instructed to do interviews. I was happy to do that, to represent the designers in the studio. Seeing how hard and passionately they worked on Shattered Space, they deserve nothing less. Optimism and excitement are pretty standard for interviews, and I'm generally pretty optimistic and excitable about games by nature. That said, my optimism is no way meant to be mud in the eye of any dissatisfied fans. I'm also very proud of Shattered Space.
That's not how it works, is what he also said. This starts to come off like in the last few weeks, there's been a lot of discourse over like certain people's inability to accept when they're wrong or to acknowledge criticism or feedback, let's say. And this comes off with the same energy, where it's like that my optimism is in no way meant to be mud in the eye of any dissatisfied fan. That's not how it works. So if you're interpreting it that way, that's your fault. You're wrong. It's just like, no, like you said something kind of stupid. Can we just acknowledge that you said something kind of stupid? You know, tiptoeing around Thor eyes. See, I don't think there's any need to tiptoe. I mean, everybody knows who I'm talking about. I will say I watched that. I got recommended a TikTok of that. Forgive me, I can't remember the name of the was it a psychiatrist or a psychologist or something? He did an interview with him. And he's like, yeah, so a lot of people say that I can't take feedback. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Hold on. A lot of people say that I can't take feedback, and that I just dismiss criticism. And I say, screw those people. I don't even think about them. And he's like, dude, you're literally doing the thing that you're saying that they do. Like, you're literally doing the thing. He's like, I don't see it that way. And it's like, bro. It's so funny. Anyway, this gives off the same energy as that. You know, it gives off the same energy. I'm also very proud. Well, he'll read it.
We all are, of any dissatisfied fans. I'm also very proud of Shattered Space. We all are. Most of the quests and levels were done by the designers who worked on previous Bethesda games and DLCs going all the way back to Morrowind. They're good at what they do, and it shows.
I understand, and I can respect and appreciate wanting to defend your team, wanting to stand up for them. I get it. But I would respect him a lot more if he said, listen, I'm optimistic about my games, about the stuff we work on, and I try to be upbeat and positive for my team. So don't think I'm dismissing your feedback. We're aware of it. You know, I'm sorry to see that a lot of people felt dissatisfied by the DLC. I'm sorry to see that. I want them to be proud of what they choose to buy within our shops and within our product line. And I want to win them back. I want them to be proud of purchasing Shattered Space. I want them to be happy about it. I want them to love that they played it. And I want it to be something that they think of for months and years to come and to stick with them. So we, it seems, missed the mark with a lot of our fans, but we're going to make them proud, and we're gonna give them what they hope for, and never think that we're dismissing the feedback. We take it to heart. We're listening. We're trying to grow with it. If he says something like that, okay, fair. But instead, it's like they're very good at what they do. That's not how it works. It's your fault.
If folks haven't played Shattered Space and they like Starfield, they're missing out. If folks have played Shattered Space and still don't like it, that makes me sad, honestly.
That makes me sad.
Just know we've also been hearing from plenty of people who love it.
Yeah, so we're gonna like not listen to you because you make me sad.
Maybe it's a game of expectations. Fans want a lot, and we do all we can to accommodate them. And here we are today.
Well, then where was the rest? Here's what I can tell you. Nobody, and I mean nobody at Bethesda, is patting themselves on the back while ignoring our players. The fact that you have to like say that because that's what everybody thinks you're doing should be a wake-up call, dude. Like, the fact that fans think that you are ignoring their feedback and instead just focusing on the positive feedback, you're ignoring the criticisms while only focusing on the compliments. That should be a wake-up call, especially because in the previous sentence, you admit to doing that very thing. If you don't like it still, that makes me sad. Just know that we've also been hearing from plenty of people who love it. If you don't like it, that's sad. But I hear lots of people that love it. Like it's literally dismissive of the people who don't like it. It's self-deceiving. It's not good. Shouldn't be surprised when Elder Scrolls 6 ends up coming out and it's like totally out of touch. He responds to the criticism of ignoring fan feedback by ignoring fan feedback. Yeah, basically. It's like, yeah, well, we understand you don't like it, but lots of people do. Like, it's dismissive towards that feedback, you know?
Want a lot, and we do all we can to accommodate them. And here we are today. So from all these interviews, tweets, articles, Steam review responses, we can see two things: a lack of accountability and tone deafness. Now, it's no secret that Starfield and Shattered Space got bad reviews. I mean, it's online everywhere, but the way that Emil responds, it's like the game got a perfect score.
That is a really good indicator. Oh God, the nightclub. Can we all just agree that Bethesda should never try to make a nightclub ever again? Because this was horrifying. It's really bad. Really bad. What if we put them in giant blue bean suits and they dance around with heads that look like lima beans, and that's supposed to be sexy? That's great, Todd. You've nailed it. It's unbelievable. But I mean, I do think there is certainly an element of tone deafness at play here. Like, there's just, if you read the reviews or if you listen to the reviews, you get an idea of what the game is. If you certainly played it yourself, you'll know. But if you listen to Emil's feedback and you listen to Todd talk about the game, you would think that this was like one of the top 10 games of the generation so far. Like, it's wild.
A technical marvel? Have you seen the loading screens? Have you played other games? Bethesda just keeps reiterating how great Starfield is, how proud of it they are, how it's a gaming miracle. And then the second part of it is fans want too much. They expect too much. I have honestly never seen anything like this before. But look, I did a video recently based on an article where Bruce Nesmith, the lead designer, said that after the negative reaction of fans from Starfield...
Wrong button. I didn't try to just randomly go to my face. That was my bad. Bruce Nesmith, lead designer, it's almost impossible to satisfy fans' expectations. He sees Bethesda in a bit of a trap that Valve has. The studio has a good run for 20 years with Elder Scrolls and Fallout, and maintaining that run is not easy. Only a few studios like Rockstar Games manage to do that, while Valve doesn't even try. Valve. I remember we talked about this interview too with Bruce, and basically the sentiment, it's easy to take it out of context. I'm not saying that's what he's doing here. I think he's got it right. But I've seen some other places take it and articles take it and they twist it into like, they've given up. Elder Scrolls 6 is going to suck and they don't care. Like, that's not what he's saying. What Bruce was trying to say was like, every year, every time we put out a new game, the expectations raise as the competition raises their expectations and the fan expectations. And so it just becomes increasingly and exponentially more difficult to meet those expectations, especially when you're trying to market your game in a way that's exciting while also not like misrepresenting what your game is going to be. It's very, very difficult to deliver on high expectations. Very, very, very difficult.
Starfield, it was nearly impossible to meet fan expectations. So again, another developer saying the fans want too much. And that gets me to my final point.
I think the sentiment from Emil is fans want too much, so but they also can't handle too much, which is why it's kind of a dissonant perspective. But yeah, I think what Bruce was saying was just reasonably players are expecting a lot. And it's at the point now where Bethesda probably can't deliver on what people are expecting, which honestly I think is probably the case. Because I don't think BGS is currently capable, especially with leadership that is willfully deceiving themselves. I don't think it's capable, or I don't think they are capable of delivering like Elder Scrolls 6 to the level that people expect and will ultimately be demanding. That's just my opinion based on what I've seen with Starfield and the reaction to the feedback and everything. I don't think you can release a game that is received in sort of a mixed way and then also ignore all of the feedback, the critical feedback, continue putting out mediocre paid mods and then an expansion that flops and is abysmal while insisting that it's actually really good and impressive, and then come out and release a masterpiece right after that. I just don't see that. I just don't see that. If they responded the way CDPR did after Cyberpunk's launch and we're like, we're going to make this right, we're going to fix it, we're going to make you proud, give us a chance, then wow me. At least you're acknowledging it. But they won't even do that. Like, well, a lot of people do love it, so shut up.
Emil's mentality, what he says, the way he talks about fans, the way he ducks negativity, his inability to take on criticism and learn from it, the way he seems to live in a fantasy world where Starfield and Shattered Space are the greatest games of all time, has spread across Bethesda. The writing styles and game design he pitched at talks is their main plan in every recent Bethesda game. Keep it simple, stupid. Add more shack building. Make stories basic. Make more radiant quest lines that never end. It's all there. His lack of creativity has hindered Bethesda, and now it's finally been exposed in Starfield, and the reaction says everything. We worked really hard on Starfield, he says. He defends people who made it and just ignores any ideas to improve.
Well, and the insinuation is that by critiquing it, you're insulting the people that made it, and therefore you shouldn't critique it like that. And it's like, no, like if I go to a mechanic and I hire them to fix my car, and they work really hard on it for 12 hours, but they end up breaking it worse, I don't care if it hurts his feelings for me to be like, no, dumbass, fix my car or give me my money back. We're going to go get it fixed and you're going to pay for it. Like, I don't care if it hurts your feelings. If I go to a restaurant and I order a filet mignon, medium rare, and it shows up burnt to a crisp, it's like a hockey puck, and it also was dropped on the floor, so it's got hair sticking off of it. And I say, hey, bring the chef out. I want him to see this monstrosity I was just served. I don't care if it hurts the chef's feelings. Like, that's unacceptable. It's literally his job. He's a grown-up. He'll be okay. I like, these are grown adults we're talking about. Who cares if their feelings are hurt? They put out a bad DLC and a kind of mediocre video game, okay? They can handle it. They should be able to respond to it, be like, shucks, you know? I was hoping they'd like it, but you know, I see what they're saying. Think they've got some points. We'll do better next time. But no, we can't even do that. We can't even do that. Like, that's unreasonable. You're being mean. That makes him sad. Stop.
This is the new Bethesda now. They are no longer interested in listening to what the fans want. Their opinion
No, only the fans that like it. They'll listen to those.
Of us is that we're just wrong and they know better. It is arrogance and delusion on another level.
It's why I've said that Bethesda at this point has kind of become a lolcow game developer. One of the common threads with lolcows is that they refuse to acknowledge when they've made mistakes, for one, but then they also often are like, they exhibit signs of like delusion, and they also often are incapable of receiving and acknowledging like quality feedback and critiques and stuff. And at this point, Bethesda is just like committed to making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And I think they're going to continue doing that.
To see this happen to a company I once loved is devastating to watch because, let's be honest, we all pray and hope for a fantastic Elder Scrolls 6, but judging by the things they're saying, they're going to do what they want. If you don't like it, it's your problem, because they know best. Look, all the problems of one company can't fall at the feet of one person, but judging by the way Emil speaks, interacts with fans, if you compare it directly to how Bethesda as a company treats fans and responds to criticism, it's almost an exact match. I hope in this video it shined a lot on why Bethesda's writing has declined over time, why it continues to do so, why they take more RPG elements away and keep stripping away features to make it more and more basic and simple. Keep it simple, stupid. All of these things have led Bethesda to where they are now. In order to grow, we must fail and make mistakes. But if we do not acknowledge our mistakes and learn from them, then we don't grow, we just fail. That is where I feel Bethesda and Emil Pagliarulo are now. I, like many fans, wish to see a return of form for Bethesda, but if you look at the patterns, it's not looking good. If Emil or Bethesda ever expect to earn their fans' trust back or get back to the top, they need to leave their fantasy world, come back to reality and listen to their fans. The Elder Scrolls 6 is Bethesda's last chance. 76 killed Fallout. Starfield never really took off, but the Elder Scrolls is still good, meaning fans still have a sliver of hope. But if the Elder Scrolls 6 is like Starfield and lets down fans, then I can honestly think this will be the point of no return for Bethesda. Anyway, that's it for this one. I mean,
it was a good video. Good video. Go sub to AVV Gaming. Did really solid. Yeah. I'm pleased by the video. Impressed. Well done. I, of course, have like a couple little tidbits. Like, I don't think Fallout is dead after Fallout 76. I think, you know, if they released Fallout 5's trailer, it would blow up 10 million views in a day. Pretty easy. So I don't think it's dead. I think it did harm to the studio's reputation, but I don't think it's dead. As for Starfield, yeah, it definitely didn't catch on. And whenever we say, I've heard a lot of people say, you know, Elder Scrolls 6 is their last chance. I think it's Todd's last chance for like a legacy to be established that's really, really positive. I think if that misses the mark mark again, it's going to do a lot of harm to his legacy, to BGS's reputation. I think Xbox will probably hit them with layoffs if that happened, because they were bought with the expectation that they were going to have console sellers, that they were going to have some of the biggest games in their lineup. And Starfield did generate a lot of play hours for sure, but whether or not it hit their own metrics and stuff still remains to be seen, because we don't know what those metrics were, what they were looking for. But overall, I mean, I think it's what he said is true. If you don't, the whole point of growth is that you make mistakes and you grow. We've all made plenty of mistakes in our lives, and we try to grow from them and learn from them. And the first step in that is to acknowledge you made a mistake and then try to figure out what went wrong and how you can avoid making that mistake and how to get better. We've all done that. We did stupid stuff when we were in high school, stupid stuff right out of high school, stupid stuff in college, stupid stuff in your 20s. Like it's a thing that happens, but you have to acknowledge you made a mistake and grow from it. And as a company, they, in my opinion, and the opinion of, I'm guessing, a lot of you, they have made a number of mistakes, but they refuse to acknowledge those mistakes and they refuse to interact with it. And instead, they're just like in this self-deceptive rut where even in the statement where he's like, we're not ignoring player feedback, but just listen and understand that we have a lot of people that do really love what we're doing. So yeah, we're listening to them. It's like, okay, so you're ignoring us, you're focusing on them. Okay, that's exactly what we're saying is happening. And ultimately, at the end of the day, like, you don't talk about something for years and years and years unless you are in a way a fan of it. I think for me, you know, I want BGS to improve. I want them to get back on their horse and start making progress again. I want them to put out good games again, but they just have really, really struggled. And I feel like as long as they are in this sort of self-deluding rut that they're in, they're just going to get worse, and the games will just get more mediocre. They'll fall technologically further and further behind, because again, just to settle this out and wrap this up, Elder Scrolls 6 is probably coming like 2028-ish is where a lot of people expect it to land. And that puts it probably like right next to The Witcher 4. Do you really think Elder Scrolls 6 will be anywhere near as like technologically impressive or compelling as The Witcher 4? Like, probably not. And I think that's, you know, we're going to see a repeat in history. So with Fallout 4, it launched in the same year as The Witcher 3. People found the roleplay elements lackluster and wanting, the writing wanting, and they found it in The Witcher 3. And that really kickstarted The Witcher 3's popularity. People seeing like, oh, look how amazing this is. This is what I was hoping for, this kind of depth. And then with Starfield, it launched like a matter of weeks after Baldur's Gate 3 launched, which offered unprecedented depth and complexity in the narrative, amazing writing, characterization, everything. It was just player agency out the ass. It was amazing. And that showcased just how lacking in those departments Starfield was. And I think we may end up in another situation where you'll get The Witcher 4 and Elder Scrolls 6, two fantasy games, launching in very close proximity, probably within a few months. And I think we all know which one is probably going to be more compelling based on the writing quality of CDPR, even in Phantom Liberty, Cyberpunk, The Witcher 3, all of their recent releases. Their writing quality is stellar. And graphically, technologically, like, do you think there's going to be load screens going into buildings in The Witcher 4? I don't think so. But I think with Elder Scrolls 6, almost certainly. You know? So I just think if they don't really figure this out, that comparison is the thief of joy for sure. But I think, you know, specifically when you are on the receiving end of that comparison, you can get screwed. You can get really screwed. Jesus, Loxy. And yeah, this was only about the writing issues and it doesn't even cover the engine discussions. Exactly. And that's the thing, is that with like Elder Scrolls 6 and BGS discussions, it's not just about the writing. It's not just about load screens. It's not just about bugs. Unfortunately for them, it's about all of it. There's a lot more than just one little thing. With Cyberpunk, everybody said if they can just polish it up and fix it, it'll be an amazing game. They fixed it. It's a great game. And they dropped Phantom Liberty in addition. Phenomenal. But with Elder Scrolls 6, like, people are saying, okay, well, they need to fix the writing And they need to continue polishing. They need to fix the performance. And they also need to fix like the engine problems, because there's a lot of problems with like constant load screens and stuff like that. So they need to fix those 3 massive things, and then it'll probably be pretty good. It's like, there's a lot. You're basically, you know, it's like that when you're playing a game with somebody, like we were just trying out that game Rematch last night with my brother. My brothers. And I was trying it. Pretty good, pretty fun. But we're playing it, and, you know, the impulse is, oh, man, if I had just hit the ball differently and if you had passed it to over here instead of over there, I could have gotten that goal. And you realize you're just saying, if things were completely different, I could have won. It's like, that's just not helpful. It's like, yeah, if only these 17 things had happened, it would have been good. It's like, okay, well, I mean, that's the big ask. Big ask. The modders will fix it. Yeah, I think that was a desire of theirs with Starfield, and then they failed to realize that the modders weren't even interested to begin with. Why don't they try to find a new engine? It's not that easy. Like, literally the entire company is trained on one engine, on one tool set. They all know how to use it. All of their assets, the animation sets, their scripting system, their questing system, their inventory systems, everything is in Creation Engine, which means they can just kind of carry that forward from game to game to game, like improving it, changing it. But moving to a new engine means redoing all of that, like all of it. And so it's a huge undertaking to just get a new engine, you know? I think the bigger problem, Byron says, I think the engine issue is overblown. I think the issue is with the engine that they are dealing with, they shouldn't have tried to make a game like Starfield. They pretty clearly did not think that the load screens would be that disruptive to gameplay when they were designing it. And they didn't think that generating fishbowls for players to explore would be that disruptive and that players would expect free traversal and stuff. But that was just a miscalculation on their part. That was a mistake. But they should have realized in the prototyping phase that was going to be jarring and it was going to hold the game back, and people would bring it up. They just should have realized that. Like, before the game even launched, we were talking about it, you know? So I think there was a way to make Starfield that was compelling and good with the Creation Engine, but it would have looked and played very differently. I think it would not have had 1,000 planets. I don't think it would have had anywhere close to that. I think you maybe have like a few planets, maybe just this solar system, and you focus on building some massive cities on a planet that's got a procedurally generated expanse out from around it, and you just go kind of the Star Wars route where it's like, yeah, we're on this planet. Everything basically happens on this one map, but you're on this planet. It's very doable. Very doable. It was more that the way they chose to design Starfield was like exactly antithetical to everything that they are good at. You know, they're good at environmental storytelling, world building, exploration within levels that are just expansive and free and fun to traverse. And they just decided to instead, what if we did little repeated points of interest and just sprinkled them all across the map, and you just go through the same 5 locations 15,000 times. Like, it didn't work. Game much close to Outer Worlds made by Bethesda would have been so cool. Yeah, well, and that's what a lot of people thought that they would be, was just that, you know, it was just going to be like Outer Worlds, but made by Bethesda. And that, I think, could have been compelling. That could have been really interesting, but it didn't work. This isn't even considering the technical debt they've accumulated. I mean, just, yeah, in general, I understand why they're like, we can't change engines. I get it. I get it. But I think they do need to do a lot of work on things like overhauling like the graphics engine, because there's certain expectations graphically nowadays that I think they'll need to overhaul. But I think they could get it working. There's just so many things they have to do to, I think, get Elder Scrolls 6 up to par. And I think they're uninterested. It's not even that they're unwilling to do that stuff. I think it's just that they are unwilling, and they're unwilling to even acknowledge the problem. It's the biggest thing. He took my thing.